Hi, my name is Christopher Malcolm, and welcome to Movable Canvas, where we talk about art, culture, the movies, and where all those things intersect. The other day I found myself watching another classic, the 1955 classic Picnic, starring William Holden and Kim Novak. Directed by Joshua Logan, written by Daniel Teradash, based on a play by William Inge. The reason I was watching it was to once again take in the work of legendary cinematographer James Wong Howe. His career, which spanned 143 films, he shot everything from Mr. Blenning Builds a Dream House to the Thin Man series to HUD, and ending with the 1975 musical Funny Lady starring Barbra Streisand. Almost as amazing as his body of work is the fact that he was able to do this as a Chinese American at a time when opportunities for people of color to even work in the studio system, nonetheless become department heads, was few and far between. Whenever I get a chance to see a James Wong Howe film, I jump at it. And while I had seen Picnic previously, it had been long enough for me to have forgotten the plot, so I hit play and off we went. Picnic belongs to a special subgenre I like to call small town scandal melodrama. Those films where a no-good drifter breezes into an otherwise idyllic small town and sets the town ablaze. Or there's some secret that one of the town's citizens is keeping under wraps until the big reveal turns neighbor against neighbor and all hell breaks loose. This specific subgenre, I would say, was most popular during the 1950s and 1960s with films like Picnic, Imitation of Life, and All That Heaven Allows. Douglas Sirk, the director of the last two, was pretty much a subgenre in and of himself. There were so many secrets and such salaciousness beneath his stories that the temperature in the room would go up as soon as you started watching them. For me, the Citizen Kane of small town scandal melodramas Peyton Place, directed by Mark Robeson and being released in 1957. It has everything from romance to war to incest to mothers fighting with their daughters to the topic of abortion, which some 65 years later doesn't seem to be any less controversial than it was then. Peyton Place is an essay all to itself, so I'll leave it at that. But if you find yourself getting engrossed in these type of films, I highly suggest you give Peyton Place a try, because you will not be disappointed. I think the fact that these films became so prevalent in the 1950s tells us something about their appeal. While our collective memory of that time is more fantasy than reality, there is a common belief that the 1950s in America were all virgins and hoop skirts and leave it to Beaver. Whenever you hear certain people refer to glowingly to the good old days, this is usually what they're talking about. Of course, it must be said that those good old days might not have been so good depending on who you're asking. The decade to follow, the 1960s, which would be famous for rebellion, boycotts, protests, hippies, radicals, and civil unrest, it doesn't take a historian to understand that these movements grew out of results of injustices in society, that same society that for some was considered so idyllic. Clearly there were tensions boiling right under the surface, sometimes in plain sight. In Todd Haynes' excellent 2002 film Far From Heaven, which sought to basically take Douglas Sirk model and say some of the quiet parts out loud, is one of my favorite scenes in all movies. The married couple at the center of the story, played by Julianne Moore and Dennis Quaid, are having an upscale dinner party at their house. Just the kind of picture postcard image of upward mobility sought as the American ideal of the period. Some secrets, like the fact that Dennis Quaid's character Frank is hiding his own homosexuality in order to fit into the societal norms of the moment, are woven into the framework of the plot. But this particular scene always makes me laugh because it's such a sly, knowing comment on race in the 1950s and beyond, beholden in a single line of dialogue. When some of the guests, who are all white, begin to discuss race relations in the town, one of them jauntily kind of stands up and points out that they don't have a race problem there because there aren't any black people. The fact that she's saying this while a black man is literally standing in front of her serving her drinks and no one seems to bat an eyelash is telling of the reality. It's not that black people didn't exist, it's just that they were pretty much ignored. It's not that racism wasn't a problem, the people at the party just happened to be so blind to the issue that they literally couldn't see it standing right in front of them. So issues like racism, homophobia got swept under the rug or simply ignored altogether. What films like Peyton Place, Imitation of Life, and Picnic do so well is to give audiences just enough of that underlying tension while placing the stories firmly in the middle of convention. Picnic isn't a story about race or homosexuality, but it is a story that is 100% concerned with another unspoken taboo then and now, sex. When William Holmes' drifter character comes to town, courtesy of an unsanctioned ride hidden aboard a passing freight train, we aren't exactly sure what to make of him. He tells the first few people he comes in contact with that he's an old friend of Alan Benson, played by Cliff Robertson, the elder scion of the town's wealthiest family. Taking one look at the soot-covered Bill Holden, the town's residents aren't quite sure whether to believe him, and neither, at first, are we. As he makes his way across town to the Benson house, he first makes a pit stop at the house of Helen Potts, played by the lovely character actress Verna Felton. As he undresses in her yard to wash off some of the dirt, he comes to the attention of the all-female family living next door. Millie Owens, played by Suzanne Strasberg, who's the daughter of Lee Strasberg, her mother Flo, played by Betty Field, and their eldest daughter Madge, played by Kim Novak. If Alan Benson is known for his money, Madge is known for her beauty. Literally in contention for what equates to an annual town award for beauty, she's predictably being pushed in the direction of the wealthiest Benson son. The people pushing include her own mother, who sees the match as the best outcome for a woman in 1950s small town. The idea of Madge pursuing a career or having dreams of her own are never really even considered. As a woman, her role was to be pretty, marry rich, and have babies. But Madge wants so much more. It's interesting to me that this should be a role played by Kim Novak. A few years ago, I got a chance to see an interview with her and Robert Osborne at the TCM Film Festival, where they discussed her career. It was painfully clear that she felt that her own career as an actress had been hampered by the perception that she was just a pretty face. She wanted so much more. She wanted to be taken seriously as an artist, but all anyone cared about was how she looked. As a man who, let's face it, I'll never have an opportunity to be undervalued due to my good looks, I can only imagine the quandary Novak must have faced. I often think about this question in the context of many actresses, past and present. You need to be beautiful to get somewhere in this town, because Hollywood and the world values physical beauty. It's part of the reason people buy tickets, to be in the company of these gods and goddesses that they wouldn't otherwise see on the street. So on one side, you want to be considered beautiful, but on the other side, you don't want to be considered to be only beautiful. If you're giving like a Meryl Streep level of performance and all the audience says is, wow, she's hot, those reactions just have to take a little bit out of you each time you hear them. The problem is further complicated for women in the industry because no one stays young forever. We all age, our physical appearances change. I know mine have. And if people only value for the way you look at 22, then what does that pretend for your ability to stay doing the thing that you love to do for a living for the long term? I think it's why actresses like Margot Robbie or Charlize Theron sometimes have to try so hard to take on roles that actively downplay their appearance to force audiences to judge them based on their talent rather than their beauty. Novak's character in Picnic embodies this paradox. She appreciates the attention her looks bring to her in the town, but she also resents her own looks as so few people are capable of seeing past them. In many ways, the entire plot of Picnic is about people being unable to see past the pretense. William Holden's character is the charismatic and fun drifter, the life of the party, but he wants to be seen as a man of substance, a man of character. Millie, the bookish younger sister of Novak's character, is both an avowed tomboy and a burgeoning woman. Her crush on the older William Holden may not amount to much more than puppy love, but if you've ever been in love as a teenager, you know how real those emotions can really feel. The girl's mother, Flo, has long since perfected the art of suppressing her emotions. It's not that she's a cold-hearted woman, she's a pragmatist. She's seen the best the world has to offer and the worst, and like most mothers, she wants to protect her daughters from harm. But even she isn't impervious to the charm of the handsome man. Observe the first scene in which the bare-chested William Holden makes his way over to the house to meet the Owens family. Like many charmers, he has a way of flirting with every woman in sight, moms included. And while she's resolute in wanting this Prince Charming as far away as possible from her impressionable daughters, there's absolutely no doubt that she too has taken notice of Holden's physique. As it turns out, Holden's character really is a college friend of Alan Benson. The wealthy man welcomes the drifter with open arms when he arrives at his house, but perhaps the type of open arms that can still keep him at an arm's distance. Their relationship is based on their time together in college. Holden's presence at the college is really a result of his athletic ability as opposed to his breeding or his wit. It's the type of thing that Alan Benson never brings up, but is never too far away from the surface in their discussions. Holden wants to be recognized for more than his charm and his physique. Novak wants so badly to be loved for more than her beauty, and Robertson, as Benson, wants so badly to be loved for more than just his money. I really love how the narrative tropes would dictate that the Alan Benson character be a cold statue obsessed with status and devoid of any real qualities. But if you really think about his actions throughout the film, as opposed to how we might expect to perceive him, he doesn't really act in a manner that you could justifiably consider as inappropriate. One of the things Picnic does well is that there aren't really any specific villains. People do terrible things, but we understand that many of those actions are motivated by desperation, pain, and insecurity. The great Rosalind Russell plays a school teacher and a friend of the Owens family. As you might expect, the small town school marm is more than happy to be the thorn in the side of the less conventional Holden. Many of the story's main plots actually turn on her ill behavior, but her character is also a woman approaching a certain age, desperate to be desired. Her outright prudishness hides a deep well of passion she isn't equipped to know how to deal with. She professes to hate Holden's characters because of who he is, but in truth, her problem is more how he makes her feel. Kim Novak's character likes the way William Holden makes her feel. For once in her life, she's met a man that makes her feel seen for more than just a pretty face. It's not that Alan Benson is a bad guy, she just doesn't love him. And no matter how practical a decision it would be for her to marry him for his money, to do so would make her feel as though she was trading her virtue like a piece of meat. Holden's character is the exact opposite of stability, but he offers her the hope of genuine love and, to a not so subtle degree, the possibility of passionate sex. Picnic is a story all about what's just underneath the surface, the passion and the emotions that burn within, the desire in plain view that society willingly turns a blind eye to avoid seeing. This is why Picnic and other stories in the genre are attractive in times of repression. While life on the surface may seem like a picture postcard representation of the good old days, the truth just beneath the surface is that being too beholden to societal norms can place society's inhabitants into a bit of a stranglehold. Feeling restricted from being who you are, loving who you love, or simply being seen for who you really are, it creates a society in which politeness is put ahead of people. The societies can build into powder kegs, and eventually, whether they like it or not, the truth will come out. Perhaps that's why we see far less stories like this in today's cinema. While there are still many of us struggling to be seen for who we truly are, most of us do so living in a world where being your true self is more easily acceptable. Not fully, unfortunately, but we have come a long way. I was trying to think of more recent films that would also fall into the small town, scandal, melodrama category, and I struggle to bring many to mind. Probably the most prominent would be something like Footloose, which was released in 1984 in the middle of a more conservative time during the Reagan era. Or obviously the aforementioned Far From Heaven in 2002, which provided an update to the 1950s form. Now, don't get me wrong, it's clearly better to live in a society where people are free to be who they want to be and express themselves fully within their communities. But I do miss a specific genre of movie. It might be scandalous, but boy, they are fun to watch. Thanks for watching another episode of Movable Canvas. If you like this type of analysis, hit the subscribe and like buttons to get more of this type of material in your feed. And let me know, have you seen Picnic? Have you seen Peyton Place? Or any of the other 1950s melodramas? Which one was your favorite? Did you grow up in the 1950s, or even in a town like the one depicted in the film? I'm curious to get your feedback, both on the film and the way our societies allow or don't allow us to truly be ourselves. Well, until the next time, thanks for watching. This has been The Movable Canvas. See you in the next one.